morning from the Meatpacking District in New York City. My name's Leslie Adatto. I'm the author of 111 Rooftops in New York that you must not miss. This is a travel guide to public access rooftops all over the 5 boroughs of New York City. But here we are in the Meatpacking District in Manhattan, underneath the High Line at 7 a.m. when the High Line opens. And we are going to go up the High Line to this beautiful elevated garden. We are going to walk the High Line and talk about so many of the rooftops that are just within spitting distance of here. You're going to be amazed how much is going on just in this neighborhood. We are at Gansevoort Street, the very bottom part of the High Line. And this is the part that opened first. Also right here at the foot of the High Line is the Whitney Museum, which has lots of outdoor terraces that are in the book. And it's a wonderful museum of American art. So when you're coming to check out the High Line, you can also take in the Whitney Museum. Let's head upstairs. Okay, this is the beginning of the High Line. We're about a third of the way up to the High Line right now. This was not always called the High Line. It was a freight railway that brought goods from upstate New York to the factories here, mainly in this area to the Nabisco factory to make Oreos and Fig Newtons. And we are going to expand a little bit more on this as we go up and see what the former freight railway has become. We are up on the High Line right now at the beginning of the High Line, the southernmost part. This was the first area to be developed about 9 or 10 years ago, and the trees have matured. It's absolutely beautiful, and there's lots of art installed down here too. Let's keep going. We're on the High Line now, and the High Line runs on the west side along the Hudson River. So there are views for the entire mile of the High Line that are absolutely incredible. The Hudson River across to New Jersey. It's amazing during the day, and at night you get all the beautiful lights as well. Let's keep going. On the High Line, there's a lot of places to relax. It is a public park, even though it's a thin river park. And they've given you amazing seating options, lots of benches, there's some grassy area. And they've kept the theme of the freight railway here all the way through the park. For example, here's some railroad tracks where they've got plantings around them. This time of year, you can still see the railroad tracks. Sometimes in the summer when it's all overgrown, they're a little harder to see. But right now in early fall, you can see it. This is the line that brought supplies from upstate New York down into New York City, which was very industrial when this was at its most active. And the High Line was interesting because the tracks went right into the factories. That was very innovative at the time. They would drop off the supplies, pick up the finished products, and take the boxes of cookies or whatever was made here down to the ships, and that would get dispersed through the country. Let's move on and see what's next. Really pretty. Here's a great example of the railroad tracks, and they've kept this in to give the High Line a flavor of what was here and give it a terrific nod to history. So in amongst this beautiful elevated garden with these maturing trees, you still get the sense that this was an industrial site, which is really important, and very different type of park for New York City. It also serves as a place for art installations that change every season or so. And here's an example of some art that is on the High Line. This goes along the entire length of the High Line. There's pop-up art everywhere you look. It's really quite amazing. The difference between the High Line as a park and other parks in New York City is that this was designed to really be part of the urban landscape. So here we are on the High Line, which was a freight railway. We can overlook the streets of New York City. We've got all the old brick buildings, and behind us we have brand new construction, the Standard Hotel, which was actually built over the High Line. And on top of that, there's a rooftop bar that's quite incredible, called Le Bain. Let's keep going. We're looking at the SDK Rooftop, which is a bar and a restaurant. You can get a full, beautiful meal on that rooftop in the meatpacking district. And a block or two away is the Catch Restaurant, which is more seafood oriented. Also a wonderful place to get a meal, get a drink, and late at night it becomes a club. Okay, here along the High Line, once again, we've got incredible views of the Hudson River. And it's incredible that they can grow trees this tall. They must be 20 feet tall. These are all grown in containers. It's kind of fascinating. And of course, we've got early morning joggers running by. That's a very popular thing to do because the High Line is a mile long. An interesting thing about the plantings on the High Line is that they don't cut them back when the flowers are finished. They actually let them go through the entire season, and that's part of Pete Udolph, the wonderful landscape architect who planned this all out. That's part of his concept, is to let the plants go through their entire cycle. I love looking out over the city because I love New York City, so I'm looking at old construction with new construction popping right out of it over here on the right at Samsung. And right now we're going to be walking under new construction as well, actually underneath the giant Standard Hotel. Here we are under this concrete monolith. To my left, just below the Standard Hotel, is one of my favorite local bars called the Brass Monkey. It's got a wonderful rooftop and a wonderful vibe. More art. It's beautiful. As we enter fall, you can see that they're leaving the leaves to turn brown, which is also a very unusual thing in a park like this. And it's really become the fashion because the High Line has become such an iconic park worldwide. As you can see, the railroad tracks continue up through the High Line, through this section of the High Line, giving it that theme, that very urban, industrial theme. And it is what's called a ribbon park, a narrow, long park. Millions of visitors come here every year. It's very well loved. So as we walk up the High Line, to our right, to the east, is the Gansevoort Hotel, which is one of the older rooftop bars. It's a lot of fun. It's got great views, and it's just a minute or two walk away from here. We're going to walk through some more of the public art, and you can see that around the High Line, because it's so loved and so popular and has revitalized the west side, all sorts of new construction has popped up. All these new glass buildings are going up left, right, and center here. In fact, the meatpacking district only has one meatpacker left, and that is moving to the Bronx right now. So the meatpacking district is really no longer the meatpacking district, but it retains the name from its industrial past. On top of that brand new building looks like a beautiful roof garden on top of this new office building. So the gardening thing is, I guess, contagious, and people want to put gardens everywhere they can. We're walking north on the High Line, and we're walking under this passageway where in the summer it's a wonderful place to come to get out of the sun. It can get a little bit hot up here during the summer, and there's a lot of art installations that happen here, and it's a great place to get a little bit of shade on your long walk of the High Line. The High Line has millions of visitors a year, but it's about 7 in the morning right now, and only the New Yorkers who are using it to commute or maybe to exercise, do some jogging, are up here. So this is a very quiet time of day. If you come later in the day, especially on a warm, beautiful day, expect to see a lot of people and hear a lot of languages from around the world, because the tourists have definitely discovered this. So early morning is a great time to visit the High Line. But in the morning you get New Yorkers who are jogging, using this as a commuting route, or just enjoying the peace and quiet of the High Line down in the West Village. So we're above 14th Street right now. This end of 14th Street is cobblestone still. It's really quite beautiful, and you have these old industrial buildings that have really turned into high fashion. Up here on the High Line, you can see that the railroad tracks, instead of being above the plantings, in this section, they've embedded them to keep that theme going. But this is actually a different section of the High Line, and we'll be in different sections as we move up this mile of the park. It's a wonderful place to gaze up 14th Street. You can see the cobblestones just go to 9th Avenue, and then it changes to a regular street. But this is lovely that it has the original Belgian cobbles. And this used to be the meatpacking district, and many of these buildings were built for refrigeration. And this was the original meatpacking district because somebody figured out how to do underground piping to keep the refrigeration in these buildings. And that's why all the meatpacking happened in this district in New York City. Let's head over across looking west and take a look at Pier 57. This is not open quite yet, but will be soon. Pier 57 is actually a landmark building because of the caissons in the river, and this is becoming a whole social complex right now. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what they turn it into, but they've been working on it for years. I've been watching them work on it bit by bit. We're over here to our left in the river is the Diller Pier that's under construction. Barry Diller has funded a lot of that, and it's going to be a huge entertainment complex built on an undulating pier. And that's going to be a very interesting change to the neighborhood too. So instead of being industrial and meatpacking, it's now all about concerts and about culture and about entertainment up here. And this is just bringing in the masses of people. The High Line is really a wonderful place to come relax as well. And they give you so many different seating options. This is one of the most popular ones where couples can cuddle up on the double wide recliners on top of the railroad tracks. And you can sit here and relax and enjoy the peace, enjoy the city, enjoy the view of the river. and just take it all in, or take none of it in and just enjoy. So in this really urban park where you're surrounded by buildings, you can look into people's offices, you can also look out to the river, but then you get incredible beauty like this, just single solitary gorgeous blossom and the beautiful horsetails growing here. It's kind of hard to believe you're right in the middle of the city. Got birds that come up here and enjoy this as well. Trees with incredible seed pods. The fact that these are so tall and doing so well is fascinating. Lots more seating because of course this is one of the most popular seating areas. And this one's kind of fun. It's still on the wheels, like little train wheels on the tracks. So they're bringing in that freight railway theme. They're continuing it through this section of the High Line. It's a lot of fun. When the High Line first opened, these chairs actually moved, but I think they put something to block it right now because I think people were moving them too much. We're approaching the Chelsea Passage, which is the Chelsea Market. This was originally built as the Nabisco Cookie Factory. So Chelsea Market is now a huge building owned by Google where there's food and restaurants and grocery stores, just a million things in there, and it's incredibly popular. But what it started out as is the the Nabisco factory where they made Oreos, where they made Fig Newtons and things that America loves. The supplies would come down the High Line, they would come down the freight line, drop off the raw materials, and the packaged cookies would get back on the train and go down to the ships and get dispersed across the country. So everybody could enjoy Oreos and Fig Newtons and saltines. We've got the noise of the early morning commute. I've been up here many, many times, and I think it's just a little bit noisier in the morning, so you don't have as many people, but you do get a little bit of the commute noise. And here we are with the Chelsea Passage and a beautiful walkway from one building to the next. We're at West 15th Street right now between Chelsea Market and the building across the street. And you can see in the past, this beautiful bit of architecture was built, a pedestrian walkway. And it's just absolutely delightful to look at, to see what kind of detail went into that building. So let's move on. We're walking through the Chelsea Passage. This is one of the only places to buy food on the High Line. So if you're hungry, it's good to know about this. We're just about West 15th Street now. And there's lots of choices here. We can see somebody starting the day, setting up, getting ready for people. This is only here during the warmer months of the year. This is shut down during the winter. So if you're hungry during the winter, a good thing to do is head into Chelsea Market with a million choices. You can bring your picnic up here and enjoy it. Let's move. Here we are in a beautiful end of summer morning on the High Line. But the High Line is fabulous all year round. You might not have all the food stalls all year round, but the High Line is open every day of the year unless there's very heavy snow. In fact, when there's a light snow, they invite the kids to come out and make snowmen on the High Line, and it's absolutely charming. The plantings are allowed to go through their natural cycle. It is well loved year-round, maybe more popular in the summer, but there are people here all winter, all spring. It's really definitely a year-round destination to come up to the High Line. We're continuing to walk north on the High Line. We're entering a new section just after the Chelsea Passage. In fact, in the summer, though, there are dances here in the Chelsea Passage. There's a series of salsa dances, which are very well attended and lots of fun. It's fun to come up and dance on the High Line. Here we are in amongst buildings that have been here since before the High Line was the High Line and brand new construction. You can see that these are buildings that serve the meatpacking district and all the industry that was going on in this part of Manhattan. We're coming up to the 10th Avenue Lookout, which is a lot of fun. It's a very different idea for a park, because usually parks, the concept of a park is to take you away from the city, within the city, but the High Line wants to celebrate the city. So they've created an amphitheater that looks out on 10th Avenue. Let's go take a look at that. I've seen all sorts of things happen here, from pop-up burlesque shows, people just looking out on 10th Avenue and enjoying the very urban nature of what you see. Let's go down and see it. Here at the 10th Avenue Lookout, you can see buildings that have been here for 100 years and buildings that are going up right now. It's this whole conglomeration of old and new that the High Line has brought together in this part of the west side of Manhattan. So sitting here in the 10th Avenue Lookout, I'm looking out on the tail lights of New York City traffic. Not what really most people think of as relaxing, but it is, and this is a very popular place to come sit, have lunch, relax, and enjoy looking down on the urban scene. You've got old buildings, you've got new buildings, a lot of construction going on around here right now because this area has become so popular with the popularity of the High Line. So here in the middle of 10th Avenue and West 17th Street is a place that you can come and relax, still be in the city, be part of the city, but put your feet up, have your lunch, catch some sun, have a conversation with a friend. There's a little romance that goes on here. It's a really wonderful place for whatever you need to do to take a break in your day. Let's move on and see what we can find now. Yeah, this is a very interesting grove of trees because these trees have struggled a little bit. I know they've had to replace a few of them, but they seem to be doing much better. And the High Line, a lot of this elevated gardening is an experiment. Trying to grow trees up here is really a challenge. And I know some of these trees have had to struggle and they've had to replace a few of them, but it seems like they've figured out how to make them healthy up here. A lot of this is really an experiment because it's all container gardening. It doesn't feel like you're in an elevated garden, but you absolutely are. You're 25 feet above street level when you're at the High Line. And it's just an incredible opportunity to garden at 25 feet above the ground. We're going to be walking through a construction shed because the High Line is so popular that a lot of buildings are going up to the left and right of it. We're still walking north. As you can tell, there's a lot of construction going on here, and I'm standing in a construction shed. This is part of the High Line right now. Of course, it's temporary. These buildings will be completed. This will all go away, but right now, be aware that these 4 or 5 blocks after the 10th Avenue Lookout, heading north into the early 20s, there's a lot of construction going on. Not the most peaceful part of the High Line right now. Oh, thank goodness that's behind us. Let's move on into the Chelsea Grasslands area of the High Line. Beautiful. Still a little noise from the construction, but it's much more beautiful here. It does have a grasslands kind of feel, very wild. It's hard to believe that everything here is planned out because it looks so natural. It looks amazing. They still have the railroad lines. That theme is carried on in this section, although the plants are growing up over them, so you only get a little glimpse of the railroad tracks at this point. The color palette is so incredible here with the pink and the yellow and different types of grasses. Okay, as we walk through the Chelsea grassland section, you can see that the path is a little bit narrower than it was earlier because this was a railway line. This is an elevated railroad track, so it has a very limited width. And because they've got all these beautiful plantings, it only leaves a small amount of space for people to walk. But this time of day, it's terrific and we can walk. They're very thoughtful when they planned out the High Line. There's lots of seating, lots of places to sit, relax, take in what's around you. This is a very interesting spot because when I first came here, somebody was living in this old apartment who used to perform out of their window because they had so many people walking by. And some New Yorkers are natural performers. I think that was finally shut down, but that caused a lot of stir for a while. It was very interesting. But it's nice to just sit here and enjoy. It's a long walk up the High Line, so it's great that you can kick back, take your time, don't have to be in a rush. In fact, it's best to not be in a rush. As you walk up the High Line, there's lots and lots of public art. Here's another example of something that looks pretty permanent, but this will probably only be here for the season. So if you want to come check it out, now's the time. It's beautiful. All of a sudden, we're not in the grasslands anymore. We've entered a new section of the High Line. We've got some Christmas plants here. Hollyberry. Things with a little color. It's feeling a lot more like fall when you start seeing this. We've got all these New Yorkers staying in shape on the High Line. You can jog up here. You can't bring your bike up here and you can't bring your dog up here, but you can jog up here. This is a fantastic time to be here, early morning, because it's not a lot of people yet. So you can see there's room to move around, room to actually enjoy the plantings, the art, the neighborhood. The best time of day to get here is probably early in the morning or maybe the last hour at night before it closes. There are art tours up here for the public art. There are horticulture tours on the High Line that you can sign up for with some of the gardeners who know so much about all these different plants. Some are edible, some are pollinators. They have incredible depth of knowledge. So there's so much going on the High Line. It's an amazing horticultural garden. And it's an amazing place for public art. There's a lot happening. So they have experts who will take you on tours of the High Line. You just need to go to the High Line's website and sign up for these tours if you're interested in the flora and the fauna, if you're interested in the art, and lots of other opportunities to get more knowledge about what's happening up here on the High Line. It's all available. So the High Line is one park, but it has so many sections. We were just in the Chelsea grasslands, and now we're walking through a tunnel of trees. It changes and changes. So the High Line continues to change from section to section. Even though it's one long ribbon park, it has definite themes in different areas of the High Line. As you know, we were just in the Chelsea grasslands, then we walked through this canopy of trees, and now we're going to walk into an open area and a lawn. So it completely changes just block by block by block. It's a lot of fun to check out different areas and get to know them. We're entering another section of the High Line now where they've opened things up and they've created a lawn, kind of like being out in the suburbs. That lawn needs to rest once in a while. Right now it has some ropes up around it, but a lot of the time that's open for picnics, for kids to run around. You can take your shoes off and enjoy being on a lawn up here 25 feet above New York City streets. Lots of seating here, more amphitheater style seating. And as I said, the lawn, it's open a lot of the time. Right now it's resting and recovering. More art. This I don't know if this is High Line art or not. So there's some art right behind me, but that's not part of the High Line. That belongs to this building, which looks like a residential building. But it's amazing how that's become part of the High Line, even though it is not commissioned by the High Line. There's just so much construction going on around here, and it seems to be ever changing since the High Line opened. So let's move on. So the High Line has created a neighborhood completely in flux and in change. There's new construction on my right, but behind us we see the old kind of walk-up tenement buildings. Who knows how long those will be here? But that's what the entire High Line used to be surrounded by, these low-rise tenement-type buildings. And now we have Starchitects creating amazing luxury housing all around us. So it is definitely in flux. It's changing enormously all the time, as you could tell by the construction noise when we were further back. We're heading up toward Hudson Yards, which is another enormous construction site too that was spurred on by the High Line. So here we're just wandering up through this narrow passageway along the lawn. We've got another access point here at 23rd Street, and we're gonna head into another section of the High Line. So we're at 23rd Street. It's one of the access points to the High Line. There are staircases and there are elevators along the way. There's a map online to tell you exactly how to access the High Line. We came in at the very southern end at Gansevoort St, but there are 5 or 6 places at least along the way where you can take elevators or come up staircases and get up here quite easily. There's just every few blocks there's an access point. We're heading north on the High Line. We're at about 23rd Street right now, and we are a little less than halfway up the High Line. So let's go see what the second half has to offer us. Okay, here's another open vista of New York City. This is 23rd Street, another main thoroughfare. We saw 14th Street, we've seen 23rd Street, and we're gonna head up as far as 34th Street, the main thoroughfares of New York City. You can look right up across, all the way across to the East River from here. It's a great day to be walking up the High Line. It's early in the morning, not crowded. It's almost fall here in New York City. The weather is just about perfect. And the High Line has all these beautiful plants, and they're going through their summer into fall changes. Well, this is so interesting. The High Line tells you that there are 110,000 plants up here. This was almost demolished a few years back, and it was a neighborhood grassroots effort that saved it. And now there are 110,000 plants, 15 ecosystems. This is open to the public all 4 seasons of the year, and millions of visitors and locals use this all year long. So the High Line is really an incredible story of redemption, of what to do with an abandoned railroad and turning it into an absolute treasure in New York City. We're walking past more public art, and we've got more Chelsea streets to enjoy, heading out to the river on my left, looking into the city on my right, and this beautiful grasslands up here on the High Line. It's kind of an amazing opportunity to see the city. I'm looking out at old, abandoned-looking buildings and brand new modern architecture, an older factory-looking building with water towers on the top. You get a little bit of everything up here. We're climbing up a little bit, and I think we're going to have the plantings below us. This is interesting. Who knows what happened here? This is what the whole area used to be. Bricked up windows, old brick buildings, who knows what was going on in them. Nothing was going on in them, or nefarious things were going on in them. This is an interesting section of the High Line because we're walking on an open grate and they plant below us here. So we're above the garden. Very interesting concept. There's this great little outpost here with some benches if you're tired or if you just want to enjoy these big leafy trees and look down at the garden below you and the railroad tracks below you. It's a really interesting part of the High Line because you're by the New World School. It's a very high-end private school, and you've got these great gardens. It's nice and shady in a hot summer day. This would be a wonderful place to take a break. Let's move on, see what we can find. Let's check this out. Another amphitheater. This is a very popular spot this morning because it's nice and cool out here, but there's some sun, and it looks like we've got a whole bunch of people sunning themselves, enjoying the beautiful fall light and how warm it is in this spot. Behind me is the Zaha Hadid residential building where a lot of celebrities are moving in. And it's an incredibly beautiful, curvy building designed by a woman architect. This is a building that would not be here if it wasn't for the High Line. It's really spurred on completely by the High Line, by the popularity of it, by making this such a desirable neighborhood. Places with shameless marketing saying, think the High Line is cool, check out our roof deck. Everybody wants to have a roof deck once they come up to the High Line and see how incredibly beautiful and freeing it can be up here. Look at all these pretty yellow flowers. They're so happy and cheerful. Coming up to the Hudson Yards area. Got a little yellow ladybug type thing on me here. So you get a lot of flora and fauna. This attracts the insects and it keeps the whole native habitat going. It's actually very good for the city to have this here. It's enjoyable for people, it's great for the environment. Here we are on a long set of benches, another great place to sit on the High Line. And we're just about to approach the Hudson Yards area, which is just off the High Line. It's connected, and it's the largest development in New York City in decades. An absolutely massive undertaking. We can go check it out. Still on the High Line. But behind us is Hudson Yards, the Shed, which is a big performance arts venue, the Vessel, which is for climbing and enjoying the views, and a giant shopping mall is behind us. And the High Line skirts around the edge of it. So what we're going to do today is stay on the High Line, but we're going to go around Hudson Yards, this enormous development. Okay, this is kind of fun because you might not know it just looking at it, but it's actually a seesaw. You can come with a friend, have them sit down at the other end, and it works just like a kid's playground. It's a lot of fun for grown-ups or for kids. This is musical. I don't know if they've got if you've got something to hit it. This is like a little built-in xylophone that's a seating area. So they've got some hidden grown-up toys here. So we're heading west right now. Instead of the High Line just going north, it goes north, it heads out west, we'll go north again, and then it heads out east and ends at 34th Street across from the Javits Convention Center. So right now we're heading right toward the Hudson River. It's a great view, except for all this construction. Instead of being along 10th Avenue, now we're parallel with 11th Avenue. And you can look over into what the Hudson Yards is named after, the actual Hudson Yards where the trains are. This is all eventually going to be covered over, and it's going to be a giant park on top of the rail yard. This is really the most unfinished part of the park, and it's going to go all the way around the rail yard and then end up parallel to us. So you can see here where the High Line planning ends, and then it's much more just natural part of, they haven't finished that part yet. Another art installation. Oh, it's got a sound installation as well. There's music. Now, none of these are plantings done by the landscape architect. This is what nature threw up here over the years. So this is very interesting to see what grows on its own. What the birds drop seeds, something grows. It's kind of incredible. So it's a much more natural part of the High Line at this point. It's been a wonderful walk here along the High Line, and we're in yet one more of the art installations. This one has the flags, it has physical art, and it also is a sound installation. I'm sure you can hear that in the background. This is Leslie here again. I am New York City's roof explorer with my book 111 Rooftops in New York that you must not miss. We just walked almost the entire length of the High Line, which is an elevated garden, one of the rooftops you must not miss in New York City. Absolutely don't miss this. We started down at Gansevoort St at the south end. We walked all the way up, and here we are at about almost 34th Street, and we've seen lots of art. We've seen 110,000 plants, we've seen 15 ecosystems, and we've seen a ton of construction going on around us. We've seen old New York and fabulous views of the Hudson River. We've seen the Empire State Building. It's just incredible. And of course the Hudson Yards new development. So much going on. Come early, come often. You'll see the High Line in all its different seasons. The plantings do look different, and you'll have a great walk. Thanks for coming.